If you've ever wanted to become an environment artist, well, now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Environment Artist Survival Kit, a brand new course designed to take you from a complete beginner to an absolute master in Unreal Engine. You're going to be creating everything you see on the screen here. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, early bird pricing is just starting. The course has just dropped. So if you want to get the course at a reduced price, hop on right now and grab it before it's too late. Let's get into the video.
Hey everyone, I'm Gabriel, a 3D environment and prop artist from Brazil. Today I'm super excited to share the full breakdown of my train station scene with you guys. From the very first idea to the final scene, I will walk you through the journey, the choices I made, the things that I learned, and just share everything that went into this project. Before getting to all that, I just want to give a massive thanks to the Stylized Station team for letting me share my process here. I followed their content since my college days, so getting to share my journey with you is truly special. So let's start with very first step, planning the idea. Choosing the concept for a portfolio piece is always a key part of the process because it sets the tone for everything else that comes afterward. When I came across this train station concept, it just clicked with me. There was something so calm about this environment, a mixed feeling about mystery and curiosity. It felt like a place that I could spend some time there, listening some music, take photos, just relax for a bit. I knew the scene was something that I would love to explore and immediately felt like the perfect match for the kind of environment that I wanted to build. Now, the concept had a rainy cloud vibe, but I wanted to put my own twist on it and reimagine it as a bright, sunny scene with vibrant color and cozy atmosphere. Something that gave off strong Ghibli-style vibes. If you might be wondering why this idea, it wasn't just a random choice. I chose this concept because it gave me the opportunity to focus on some key skills I wanted to improve, like stylized texturing, foliage creation, and creating that painterly anime-inspired vibe. On top of that, I saw this project as a way to explore some technical workflows that I hadn't really tried before. Things like creating twin sheets and learn how to set up materials in Unreal Engine felt like the perfect way to push myself creatively and technically. In this section, I will examine how my initial analysis and planning evolved into final design process. I will compare the materials I intended to use at the beginning with the final results and discuss key observations that shaped my workflow and decision making. So, at my initial concept analysis based on the first image, the focus was to break down the scene into distinct materials category while planning to use a mix of twin sheet, individual texture, and unique assets. The idea was to use twin sheets only for small areas to reduce time consumption while keeping modularity, use twin pattern as specific hand model assets instead of entirely relying on tileable textures, and rely more heavily on create unique individual model for certain areas instead of depending on modular workflow or using the twin sheet. So here I want to share some key lessons that I learned, and one of them was about the modular workflow efficiency, because using tileable textures you can drastically reduce the time you spend on creating unique geometry. In the twin sheets, my initial approach, I underestimated how versatile they are, and they could be. Once I learned how to manipulate and use them properly across multiple surfaces, it became a major workflow improvement for me. Alright, let's talk about the modeling phase. For this project, I kept things super simple. Like I mentioned earlier, my focus was on the textures, so I didn't want to spend too much time overcomplicating the models. My goal was for the texture to really define the style of the scene, with the models acting more a solid foundation to support them. Because of that, most of the final models were just polished versions of my initial blockouts. I refined the shapes, added bevels to the edges for a soft and stylized look, and kept everything nice and clean. If you want to push the details even further, you can also explore techniques like using edge decals, but for this project I want to keep it straightforward. This is the other trick that I really like to use. Before export your model to the engine, apply those crazy color materials to your mesh so you can check if everything is set up properly and you make sure that they are assigned to the right spots. It's a really quick way to identify if everything is good and you can send your models to the engine. Another really useful tip that I can give to you guys here is when you are creating your block out, always think about scale. So using a human-sized proportion really helps your environments to feel grounded and believable. As I mentioned during the planning phase, textures were the main focus of this project. They became the area where I wanted to grow the most. Alongside improving my skills in Unreal Engine, my goal was to deepen my understanding of the texturing pipeline, gain confidence in creating various materials, and ensure they followed a cohesive art style throughout the environment. Here I will walk you through one of my materials and explain how I approached the process of dividing and assembling them. Before diving in my process, I want to share two fantastic resources for anyone new to Substance Designer. Alex Beddoes' tutorial and blog. Alex wrote an excellent article about becoming a material artist. I highly recommend reading it, and you can find it on ArtStation website, both his tutorial and the blog. And I want to recommend Javier Perez tutorials also on ArtStation site. These are excellent for understanding the fundamentals and start your journey in creating materials. These resources provide more than enough to help you get started with Substance Designer. For this specific scene, I gather reference to set a clear goal for the style and feel of my textures. My main inspirations were the rich painterly detail of Studio Ghibli's environment from their iconic films, and the stylized painted textures from Immortals Phoenix Rising. One resource that stood out was Vincent's interview with the Experience Point community, where he explained essential concepts for creating painted texture. That interview helped me immensely in applying these ideas successfully, and you can check the interview by yourself on Experience Point's website. For sure you will get some really good information from there. So one of the most eye-opening aspects of this interview was the way that Vincent stressed the importance of applying these palettes with intention rather than just choosing colors randomly. And I talk about color theory because on the interview he showed some slides explaining how he approached colors, and that was really useful. I can show to you guys was those one, but I really recommend you check all the interview because it's really rich about informations. My approach to texture creations combine techniques and ideas from various amazing artists. Over time, I've adapted these methods to fit my workflow and goals. For anyone learning gaming art, I recommend this approach. Study from multiple tutorials, experiment with techniques you learn, and adapt them into a process that works the best for you. This method has helped me develop my skills and understanding of core concepts, instead of merely copying what I see in tutorials. Now let's dive into my process. I started with a simple base shape for wood plank. To speed up the workflow and keep my graph clean, I used a custom node from Thiago Klafke's resource. If you are unsure about what a custom node does, you can right-click it and open reference to analyze its inner working. In this case, the node simplified the creation of edge details and exposed only the most relevant parameters, reducing clutter in the graph. Instead of managing dozens of nodes, I could focus on the key adjustments that directly impacted the shape. For base color, I blended noises with brush strokes imported from Photoshop. Two of those brushes came from Thiago Klafke's resources, and the another was part of Ghibli-Inspired brush pack, I believe. So to scatter these brush strokes, I used this custom node called Easy Splatter by Jimmy Malakier. This is more performance friendly and straightforward, but you can use the basic shape splatter from Substance Designer. You can achieve the same results. After layering brush effects with careful consideration of color theory, I graded the textures to refine the tones. I then applied a watercolor effect using a slow blur combined with a simple custom node. This custom node do the same thing as the Easy Splatter, but the only difference is the Easy Splatter lets you plug input as a brush, and with this custom node you already has this shape created with this simple setup that you can see right here on the top. With the watercolor effect established, I added color variations to the planks and layered details like leaks and dirt, how you can see in this setup here. My roughness map was pretty straightforward. I used the masks from the base color textures and I fine-tuned them using level nodes for greater control of each layer. So here you can see I just grabbed some masks that I generate along my graph, and here I put them together to generate my roughness. Let's talk about how I created the foliage for my scene. I used three main techniques to bring everything to life while keeping things efficient and stylized. For the first type of grass, I created a painted atlas textures in Photoshop and used it to generate a mask. This mask was then used to create grass cards inside my 3D modeling software. This method is incredibly versatile, allowing you to control the shapes and appearance of the grass by adjusting the atlas and mask. It's great for hand-painted stylized environments where you need natural-looking grass patches. If you're curious about this technique, you can check out resources like Zugzug's art channel, which offers tutorial on how to create painted atlas for stylized foliage like the one that I show here. For the top of the trees, I use a technique called quad mesh to billboard, which I learned about through the Environment Survival Kit. This method is a shader-based approach where all the foliage cards face the camera, creating the illusion of 2D foliage while keeping them in 3D. And here is why this is an awesome technique. It is a performance friendly, you can easily update the foliage look by swapping the alpha texture, and it gives the environment that stylized anime look while keeping them dynamic. For additional grass types, I modeled individual blades in Maya. This was a straightforward process that helped me better understand how to work with foliage in Unreal Engine. I also kept the material setup simple, allowing me to experiment and learn how foliage interacts with light and shading. If you want to explore this technique even further, I recommend visiting Victoria's YouTube channel, which has fantastic tutorials on creating foliage like grass, flowers, and trees. So I will talk a little bit about my foliage setup and how I use them. I keep my foliage creation simple and efficient, how you saw. I used different techniques. I applied in a really straightforward way, I keep everything simple just to understand the techniques, so I could deep dive even more on the next time that I will work with foliage. So how you can see in the image, I only created 7 different assets. One of them is the tree, another is only the top of the tree that I scaled down. I created one patch of grass with blades, and the other grass patch and the bushes are created using the atlas that I made on Photoshop. And the good part, only besides the blades, you can use custom alphas that you just recreate on Photoshop and change the look of all of those foliage. Of course, you probably need some fix, at least for the atlas, repositioning your mask, but for the top of the trees, the shader will handle. And so you just need to plug a correct alpha that makes sense for the top of your tree or this bush, and it will work fine. And you have all the material instance parameters, so you can change and create variations with that too. So yeah, this technique is really powerful, and you can create a bunch of different variations with a few assets, so it's pretty cool what you can do with some simple assets on your scene. So I hope you can try for yourself some of these techniques and create really beautiful environments. This part is so fun because it really sets the vibe for your scene. One of main goals for this project was to change the mood from the original concept how I mentioned on the planning phase. So I wanted to give a warmer, brighter and more inviting feeling, something that feels cozy, magical and immersive. My main inspiration for this came from Studio Ghibli and those two artists that I will show here in the mood board section. First, let's talk about mood inspiration. When I think about Ghibli movies, what comes to mind are their warmth, vibrant colors, and that magical charm their environments radiate. They use a soft, natural lighting and cozy shadows that just make everything feel alive and welcoming. Then there is Yasmin, a huge talented stylized environment artist. Her breakdowns are fantastic and really helped me throughout my production. Because I had opportunity to see how she uses light and shadow to create a perfect atmosphere in her scenes. And I'm a huge fan of her work, not just because of the lighting, but her sculpting and texturing skills are top notch too. So she was a really big influence on this project. Here we have the work of Trung Nhi Wen. His ability to bring anime-inspired visuals to life in 3D is just incredible. His use of color, lighting, and overall mood really make his words feel magical and full of life. I wanted to take inspiration from all these amazing sources and create a mood that feels natural, inviting, and magical, like something straight out of a Ghibli film. For me, it's all about finding the right balance, using light and color thoughtfully to breathe life into scene and evoke the emotions I want the viewer to feel. Alright, let's dive into how I brought this mood to life with lighting. My final setup is actually pretty straightforward. It is a mix of two main directional lights and some additional artificial lights to fine-tune certain areas. Let's start with the main directional light. This is the start of the show. It's a warm, golden light that acts like the sun. It casts those soft, natural shadows and gives the whole scene that bright, cheerful daytime vibe. Then there's a secondary directional light. This one plays more a supporting role. It's a cool toned light with very low intensity, and it doesn't cast any shadow. Its job is to add just a hint of color to the shadows, so they don't feel too heavy or overly dark. It's a subtle touch, but it makes a big difference in keeping the mood balanced. To make things even more interesting, I added a few spot and rect lights here and there. These helped me highlight specific areas to create more depth in the environment. It's all about those little details that make the scene feel layered and alive. So I talk a little bit about the lightings that I used and the techniques, and here in these images you can see how each of them are working like separately. Here is only the main light, the secondary directional light, the spotlights, and this artificial light that I created, and here is all with all of them together, and each one has their own value. So with this print you can really see, so it is really nice. Here on my post-processing effects, my setup was pretty simple. I only used sharpen effects to pop the details a little bit more on the textures, and the bloom effect to create that glowing warm effect that give that magic and stylized look to the scene. I try to not pump up those values too much, but yeah, my lighting and textures already got me where I want with my mood section that I explained. So I try to not go crazy on the post-processing effects here. At first, I hadn't planned to include any clouds in the scene, but after receiving feedback, analyzing the mood that I want to achieve, and revisiting my references, I realized that adding clouds would elevate the atmosphere and make the entire scene pop even more. It was a last-minute addition that turned out to be a game changer for the environment. I started by gathering various cloud images from stock sites and combined them into a single texture using Photoshop. This gave me a strong base to work with. From there, I created a series of masks that allowed me to break the cloud into different elements, like edges and highlight. This mask became the foundation for the material's flexibility and control inside Unreal. So I set up the master material with parameters that let me tweak key aspects of the cloud. I could adjust things like contrast, fade effects, and tinting to create depth and variation. By using the masks that I had made, I could also control specific details like the ring highlights and the horizon overlay to give the clouds a dynamic, lifelike quality. The material also allowed me to add a gentle movement to the clouds with adjustable speeds and directions, making them feel natural and alive. These adjustments are all controlled within the material, making it easy to test variations and refine the look until I was happy with it. In the end, the clouds brought an extra layer of depth and charm to the scene, helping to capture the magical mood I was aiming for. It's a perfect example of how small details, even the ones you didn't originally plan for, can have big impact on the final result. And if you want to know more about this technique, I recommend the tutorial from Tyler Smith that you can find in ArtStation Marketplace. He showcased how to set up the material and how he put together different images, and with that information you can create any cloud that you want for your environments. Now let's talk about the VFX. I wanted to bring a sense of movement and life to the scene. So I created a simple wind trail effect and added some falling leaves to enhance the natural vibes from this environment. So for the leaves, I kept it straightforward. I modeled a single leaf and used a basic emitter setup in Unreal Engine. From there, I adjust parameters like spar rate, wind direction, and color to make the leaves more natural across the environment. It's amazing how such a simple effect can add so much personality to a scene. It really makes the space feel alive. To further enhance the atmosphere, I used Easy Fog, a paid asset available on Fab Marketplace. It's an excellent pack created by William Faucher that uses fog cards for precise control over placement and density. It allows me to fine-tune the fog so it blended seamlessly with the scene's light and mood. If you are learning Unreal, I can recommend William Faucher's YouTube channel enough. It's a place packed with great tips and insights for leveling up your skills inside Unreal Engine. Together, this small VFX detail like drifting leaves and the subtle fog helped me to tie the whole scene together. They added that little extra magic and create a more dynamic, immersive experience. It's a reminder that even the simplest effects, when used thoughtfully, can have a huge impact on the overall of your scene. Thank you so much for watching my breakdown. Throughout this video, I focused on sharing the techniques I used and point you to the same resources where I learned them. This way, you can dive deeper into the explanations I receive and get the same foundation to explore your own projects. I choose this approach because it allows me to explain each step of the process in detail and give you insight into my thought process along the way. If you have any questions, want to share feedback, or just chat about project, feel free to reach me out. You can contact me to LinkedIn, ArtStation, Discord, or even drop a comment below. I hope you found this breakdown helpful and inspiring.